Hello everyone, I'm Professor Plink. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Before we get into today's video, special shout out to my most recent super thankers, Martha V 4654, Binline Weber 2095, Jonathan 1, RJ 66600, Piao Meow Noir and a Waifu Car, James Lamica, and Captain Subs. Thank you all very much for your kind support of my channel. You are the logical lozenge lubricating our larynx against religious laryngitis. Thank you very much for helping me to continue to do what I do. And if you like what you see in this video and would like to help out the channel, make sure to subscribe, click the bell so you'll always be notified when new content comes out, and of course, like this video, maybe pop in a comment. All that goes a long way towards pleasing the YouTube algorithm, all blessings be upon it, and keeping my channel motoring along. Now on to today's video. Today we're wading back into that undeniably deep pool of bite-sized, TikTok-style theistic shorts that compose the compilations of Creationist Cringe. If finding decent-sized videos from apologists to respond to takes several minutes to find a good one here on YouTube, then using the same search parameters and setting the filter to shorts instantly brings back dozens and dozens of laughably ridiculous videos worthy of inclusion. They are like swarming wasps that keep pouring out of the hive of theistic delusion. Well, wasps with no stingers who keep flying into each other, bonking their heads, then falling to the ground and are unable to right themselves because they can't tell which way is up. And to be fair, there are never really any decent points, arguments, or questions that come out of these short vids, so I am admittedly not addressing the best and the brightest that the theistic community has to offer here. But then, they do at least represent where a large portion of believers' heads are at, and displays their line of thinking and what they actually believe is convincing. So it's good to occasionally attend to them so we can understand the mindset of our philosophical interlocutors. And, to be honest, they are often so entertaining to see them flailing while thinking they're making substantive points. So that's what we're going to be going into today. So let's not dilly-dally any further and kick off the 5th installment of Creationist Cringe. So who's starting things off for us today?
Scientists have found literal proof that Noah's flood in the Bible was real, Christian or not. Watch this video till the end. So scientists have recently found a fish that was on top of a mountain. And you think, why is that important, Caden? It proves that that was real because the fossil of the fish was on the top of a mountain, which proves the water covered all these mountains. And if you thought that was crazy, check out this video of what they think the flood was like. If you love Jesus, make sure to subscribe.
This is Caden Pody, a ridiculously popular Christian YouTuber who hasn't actually put out a real lengthy video in months, because he primarily puts out little shorts like this one that tend to rack up hundreds of thousands of views, despite mostly being just as bad as this one was. And this one was so bad. There is so much wrong with this video in such a short amount of time. The first problem is that you're trying to use the existence of fossils on mountaintops to prove that Noah's flood actually happened. Well, let's take a look at that. Answers in Genesis, that oh-so-reputable source and institute of reliable scientific inquiry,
Are you kidding me? This baby is off the charts. Why?
has concluded that the biblical flood supposedly happened approximately 4,300 years ago in the year 2348 BCE. But paleontologists would tell you that it takes more than twice that, at least 10,000 years, for fossils to form under the best of conditions, and oftentimes even longer than that. So, if a global flood did indeed occur 4,300 years ago, there certainly couldn't be any fossils from that time period on top of mountains. Well then, how could fish fossils, or fossils of any aquatic life for that matter, ever be discovered on top of mountains? How could sea creatures get to the top of mountains over 10,000 years ago and then die and fossilize there, you may ask? Well, quite simple really. The mountains haven't always been mountains. See, the land masses of the Earth are not static. They don't sit completely in one place and never ever move. The continents set on tectonic plates that are constantly shifting. Mountain ranges form when pieces of Earth's crust, called the plates, smash against each other in a process called plate tectonics, and then they buckle up like the hood of a car in a head-on collision.
The process known as plate tectonics occurs during continental drift. This example shows two large segments of continental crust colliding very slowly over millions of years. One land mass is forced underneath the other. To relieve the stress, mountain ranges are often formed in the overriding landmass, while earthquake-prone zones are formed below.
So, millions of years ago, the land that is now the top of the mountains was actually underwater because it was the very edge of a continent. So it was literally the shore of a landmass. It collided with the shore of another landmass, and over a long period of time, the two landmasses pushed each other higher and higher until you had the peaks of a mountain formed. So what is the highest piece of land now was once the lowest underwater piece of land once upon a time. The literal perfect place for a fish to die and leave a body that would later fossilize. Then the mountain formation would carry that fossil to a higher and higher elevation until, Bob's your uncle, you have fish fossils on a mountaintop. And then there's the lunacy of the second half of your video, which is an animation of what the supposed flood would have been like, according to creationists. And you offer this up as some kind of evidence that is supposed to be convincing that the global flood actually happened. Are you serious? I mean, let's use that same logic and look at this.
Commence primary ignition.
So I guess because I showed you this, you now believe that an Imperial space station the size of a moon actually blew up a planet named Alderaan? Because that's how that works, right? And hold on a sec, if we could just go back to that video of the flood, were there people running from the water wearing modern suits and dresses? Sure thing, buddy. Sure thing. Whatever you say. You really gave us a convincing reason to believe in the global flood there, pal. So let's move on and check out what Islamic apologists are offering in terms of arguments against atheism these days.
Try this with your atheist friends. Put something in front of them, such as a phone, book, pen, or anything, and then ask them, would you believe me if I told you that this phone, book, or pen came into existence on its own? They will laugh at you and say, of course not. Then ask them again, can you show me any worldly physical thing in our surroundings that came to existence on its own? They will say that's not possible, and they will act like you're asking a foolish question. Then ask them this finally, if nothing in our surroundings came into existence on its own, then how do you believe that this amazing world and the most complicated machines on earth called humans came into existence out of nothing or on its own? They will have no answer to this. If an atheist still doesn't understand, then they are simply arrogant. Quran is an unseen message from your God to you. See it and try to understand it before it's too late.
You know, all religious apologetics fail in one way or another. But this, I have found, is why Islamic apologetics is particularly so bad. This is the central argument of all Islamic practitioners against non-believers. I can hardly ever find an argument from a Muslim against atheism that does not include this nothing can make itself kind of argument. And of course, it's been debunked ad nauseum. There are a number of ways this argument is bad. For one, atheists don't necessarily posit that the world or universe came into existence from nothing. If you're referring to the Big Bang Theory, there's nothing in Big Bang cosmology about the universe coming into existence from nothing. Ahem. The Big Bang was not the creation of the universe out of nothing. It's the expansion of the current presentation of our universe from its initial state of high density and temperature. Not that atheists have to hold the Big Bang Theory anyway. Atheists could think any number of things about how the universe came to be the way that it is. Multiversal expansion, simulation theory that says this is all a computer simulation, other non-deity supernatural forces like magic or the blind, unguided machinations of interdimensional beings that accidentally resulted in our universe formation. Literally anything, so long as it doesn't posit a creator God, and it's still atheism. So insisting that atheists believe the universe created itself is a complete straw man. Not to mention, there is a critical fallacy that you're employing when you insist that the options are either a creator God intentionally made the universe, or the universe, quote, made itself, unquote. You're employing a false dilemma fallacy. This is when only two choices are presented, yet more exist, or a spectrum of possible choices exist between two extremes. False dilemmas are usually characterized by either this or that language, but can also be characterized by omission of choices. I mean, there are all the other choices that I just presented as possible explanations for the existence of the universe that atheists could believe in, the simulation theory or multiverse or whatever. But there's also another glaring one that the way you phrase your questions attempts to completely write off. And that is that something can occur naturally. You completely discount the possibility of something occurring on its own, though not technically creating itself. I mean, you start off offering examples of a phone, a book, or a pen, and asking if they came into existence on their own. And of course, the answer is no, because you offered up 3 examples of man-made objects. Of course they couldn't come into existence on their own, because they are, by their very nature, man-made, thus require humans to make them. But then you go on to say,
Can you show me any worldly physical thing in our surroundings that came to existence on its own?
And to that, yes, I absolutely can. I can show you every plant, animal, rock, mountain, cloud in the sky, body of water, landmass, planet, star, comet, nebula, galaxy, etc. Basically, everything that can be considered as naturally occurring. In a very real sense, they all came into existence on their own insofar as they happened without intentionality. Well, some animals could be said to be intentional, where their parents mated with the intention of having children, though I do know several people who were, well, let's call them happy accidents.
Your mom turned to me and she said, "Hey, you want him? Take him." Then she died. And I took you. Do you know why? I just lost my cat in a fire, and I needed something to pet and feed.
But the point is that lots of things occur naturally through purely natural forces. Now, you, as theists, believe that everything that happens is intentionally guided by the hand of God. So you don't think there is such a thing as natural occurrences that are completely without intentionality. But when a cell divides to form a new cell, there's no proof or even any reliable indication that there's any intentionality behind that. That it isn't just the blind, unintentional result of the cell doing what cells do. When gravity, thermodynamics, and nuclear forces align and stars are formed, there's no proof that it was a god doing it and not just the blind, unintentional result of those natural forces just doing what they do. There's no reason to think that some supernatural will of an ethereal deity was behind any of it beyond a God of the Gap's desire to attempt to explain the why of a process that you have trouble wrapping your head around, despite the fact that we have a scientific understanding of how and why these things happen naturally. So, if something happening naturally is what you mean by coming into existence on its own, then yes, I find that most things in this universe did indeed come into existence on their own. I see no reason to think that divine magic was responsible for any of it. Now, please, can you go back to the drawing board and attempt to come up with something a little better than a derivative of the blind watchmaker argument? It's never worked yet, and it isn't going to suddenly start overriding rationality. So, who else wants to chime in on why they think God exists?
When you truly understand the level of evil in the world today, then you must understand the only equal and opposite force can be God.
Holy shit. Ladies, get out your grape whistles. It's Andrew Tate.
A grape whistle? Really?
Okay, when I finish graping you, I'm gonna go upstairs and I'm gonna grape your mother and your father, and then I'm gonna take your whole family down to the basement and grape you all for decades and decades.
See, I think this is too much. I think it's too much.
Shh.
When you truly understand the level of evil in the world today, then you must understand the only equal and opposite force can be God. Another thing I've argued with atheists about, they don't understand that even God as a concept, even just as a concept, in and of himself becomes a real thing. If you have 1,000 people and those 1,000 people believe in a God, even if there's no man in the sky, but those 1,000 people believing in a God makes them act righteously. But even as a concept in and of itself, God is a real force. God, the idea as a force, is making the people act righteously. So God must exist in some form. I understood that the thing that made me stop being an atheist is simply the amount of evil I saw around me. I was like, if this much evil, if Satan is going to appear, if Satan appears in front of you, you're going to have to say, okay, well then God must be real. Who would attempt to destroy the baseline morality that was God-given? Satan. So if Satan is trying to destroy our morality, then God must be real. So equal and opposite forces, Newton's law proved God.
All right, let's ignore the near seizure-inducing level of irony of Andrew flipping Tate talking about the amount of evil in the world. Yes, Andrew, there's a lot of evil in the world. Like, say, for instance, sex trafficking, exploitation, criminal conspiracy, all the sorts of things that get you charged and put on house arrest as authorities build a case to send you up the river where your ass belongs for the rest of your life. But aside from all that, what you said was ridiculously stupid in a number of ways. So, you describe God as a force. You say that because there's evil, the only opposing force must be God. Well, that's rather silly. If there is evil, then the natural opposing force would be good. Not God, good. Add another O to that word, pal. If evil is naturally occurring, then it follows that good would also be naturally occurring. Claiming that humans are only capable of committing evil and require some supernatural being to exist in order to spur humans to positive action is ridiculous. Why would humans only be naturally capable of evil? If we can be evil naturally, then it stands to reason we can be good naturally. And if good can exist as a natural occurrence, then there's no need for a God to exist to inspire such good actions. And of course, we have explained the archaic term good, which could be more accurately described as pro-social behavior or ethical behavior, as an evolutionary adaptation. As social creatures, we are massively benefited by our cooperative and collaborative actions. We do immensely better when working together, and when we work to benefit the collective, than we do when we're rigidly self-serving and exploitative of others. If experience has shown you that your neighbor is likely to stab you in the back to steal what you have for themselves, then you aren't going to be likely to help them, and they're not going to be likely to help you. And when no one's helping anyone else, society eventually collapses. Society collapses, and everyone in it dies. Societies that engage in what would be dubbed as good behavior, behavior that promotes positive social values, values that benefit the whole, work toward the betterment of everyone, are immensely more successful than ones that prioritize evil actions, i.e., doing things to benefit yourself at the expense of others. Something you, Andrew, know all too well. Also, not for nothing, but no being is or could ever be a force. Forces are things that cause movement. A force is a push or pull upon an object resulting from the object's interaction with another object. Whenever there is an interaction between two objects, there's a force upon each of the objects. When the interaction ceases, the two objects no longer experience that force. Forces only exist as a result of interaction. Gravity is a force. Electromagnetism is a force. A being who you believe inspires you to act positively is not a force. It's an idea, a concept. And that gets into the next way your argument is pure flotsam. You said that even if there isn't an actual man in the sky, if the idea of God results in people acting in positive ways, then that God does exist as a real force. Well, congratulations. You just proved the existence of Santa Claus. Okay, so that's enough from you. Anyone else have something to say on the subject of theism versus atheism?
How do I get an atheist to believe in God? In my opinion, an atheist is not an atheist because of his head, but he's an atheist because of his heart. Even if there was definitive proof of God's existence, atheists still wouldn't be Christian. Whoa. What a claim, Spencer. How can you say that if God was right in front of an atheist, they wouldn't believe? In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve would walk with God. Obviously, that is undeniable proof that God exists. Would you not agree? And Adam and Eve walked with God, and yet in their pride, they chose not to be with God. I mean, look at the Israelites. Imagine being in Egypt when God brought those plagues. Imagine being at the Red Sea when it parted. That is undeniable proof that God existed. A pillar of fire appearing out of nowhere. That is undeniable proof that God existed. And what does it say about the nation of Israel? That they complained and they were unbelieving. If people with undeniable proof of God's existence, still some of them decided not to choose God, then I know that it's not about belief in God. It's about surrender to God.
Crime and Nitley. How much wrong can you pack into a 1-minute short? Let's see. There was mischaracterization of atheists, assuming the motives of atheists, mischaracterization of what a Christian is, surprisingly, getting the Garden of Eden story wrong, and getting the Exodus story wrong. So let's start breaking this down. For starters, atheists aren't atheists because of their head, but because of their heart, is what you said. In my experience, the overwhelming majority of atheists are atheists because they literally do not believe that God exists. This fellow's positing that atheists are only atheists because we are mad at God. That's the implication when he insists that if we were presented with undeniable proof that God exists, we still wouldn't follow him. Well, even if that's true, and it certainly is in my case, I wouldn't follow the Christian God even if I were convinced he existed. Atheists would no longer be atheists if they believed that God existed. An atheist is a person who doesn't believe in God, not a person who doesn't follow your God. I mean, Hindus don't follow Yahweh, but no one considers them atheists. A person who believes in God but doesn't follow or doesn't like that God is not an atheist. So if I were convinced that your God existed, I wouldn't be an atheist anymore, but I wouldn't be a Christian either. A Christian is not a person who believes in God, or specifically the Abrahamic God. Or are you saying that Jews and Muslims are Christians because they believe in and follow the same God that you do? So you got both the meaning of atheist and then the meaning of Christian wrong. Then you talk about the story of the Garden of Eden, and you say that even though Adam and Eve had undeniable proof of God's existence, they chose in their pride to separate from him. No, they didn't. Nothing that happened to them was their choice. It was all things that were done to them. So in the story, they were created without the capacity to know good and evil, right from wrong. So when the serpent told them to eat from the tree of knowledge, they didn't really have any reason to refuse. It can be argued they didn't even have the capacity to refuse because they didn't know what wrong was. They didn't know it would be wrong to do so. They had no reason to not do as the serpent was telling them. They couldn't know that disobeying God was wrong because they didn't know what wrong was. And being that God was all-knowing and all-seeing, he must have known what the serpent was doing as he was doing it, what the serpent was telling them to do. And he must have known that they would do as they were told and eat the fruit, because God knows everything. So he could have stopped it at any point, but he didn't. So Adam and Eve did as they were told and ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge. And when they did this, God cast them out of the garden. They didn't choose to leave and separate themselves from God. God cast them out. Literally everything that happened to Adam and Eve was by God's design, with God's full knowledge, and by God's choice. Adam and Eve, by virtue of not even knowing right from wrong, were completely innocent when they ate the fruit. They could only be said to be capable of intentionally doing something wrong after they ate the fruit. So even in the eating of the fruit, they were necessarily innocent because in that moment, that's all they even could be. So literally everything that befell Adam and Eve was 100% God's fault and God's choice. Adam and Eve didn't choose anything, certainly not to separate themselves from God. And then, as far as the Exodus story goes, how were the Israelites not believing? I mean, there were two groups of people in that story. The Israelites, who were the Jewish people, Yahweh-believing slaves that Moses led out of slavery. And then there were the Egyptians, led by Pharaoh, who believed in the Egyptian religion and not in Yahweh. So it was the Egyptians who were the non-believers in the story. And yet you say the Israelites, the ones who absolutely did believe in the Abrahamic God, who you call unbelievers. And then you say, look at what that says about Israel today. So Israel today is full of non-believers? Is that what you're saying? A country where a mere 95% of the population believe in and follow the Abrahamic God through one religion or another? In what way were the Israelites ever non-believers? I mean, are you referring to the part in Exodus 32 where the encamped Israelites thought Moses had abandoned them after being gone up the mountain for a long time? I mean, it was 40 days that he was up there, and in their need for someone to act as an emissary of their God the way Moses had been up to that point, they got Aaron to create a golden calf for them to extol as an embodiment of their God. Well, even this wasn't unbelief. They still believed in the God that had parted the sea and made that pillar of fire. They just didn't know how they were supposed to worship him. They needed someone to follow, to guide them in how to do that. Now, they wanted that to be Moses, but after over a month, they thought he wasn't coming back. So they did the best they could, and they created a graven image to worship. And how the hell can they be blamed for going against the commandment to not create any graven images when Moses hadn't yet told them, don't create any graven images? He hadn't given them the 10 Commandments yet. So how can it be their fault that they didn't follow the rule that they didn't even know about yet? So at no point in the story were the Israelites ever non-believers. And the actual non-believers in the story, the Egyptians, you ignore completely in your zeal to malign the Jews in the tale. So that's all the creationist nonsense I can handle for one day. We had some of the classics. There was the teleological argument from design, and atheists are just mad at God that they deep down believe in. But we also got some hot garbage about the global flood and mountaintop fossils, God being real even if he isn't real, so long as people believe in him, and a complete misreading and misrepresentation of biblical parables about the Garden of Eden and Exodus of the Jewish people. It really gives one to ponder how many of these people actually believe the arguments that they make, and how many of them are just grifters who know the faithful who watch their content will be so taken in by their BS, because they so want it to be true, that they won't stop and check on the things that they are saying for validity. But either way, we at least had some fun dissecting the dumb fuckery. So that's where we'll end things for today. So, thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe so you'll always be notified when new content comes out. Till next time, I'm Professor Plink reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.